Here's the thing. AI will not take over the world. People who know how to use information more effectively and more time effectively and more to the point, I think are going to actually have a larger influence. And it's already happening.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this. And it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Today's guest is Michael Walsh, a visionary leader, speaker, and author who has spent over 30 years helping business owners ignite their passion, scale their companies, and achieve what he calls the 3 core freedoms: freedom in their business, freedom from their business, and freedom because of their business. This is what we're all about here. Michael is the founder of Walsh Business Growth Institute and author of Freedom by Design, the Business Owner's Guide to Grow, Make an Impact, and Find Joy Again. He's quietly worked behind the scenes with hundreds of small and mid-sized business owners, guiding them to growth levels beyond what they thought was possible, without sacrificing your life in the process. If you've ever felt stuck in that frustrating zone of hell, too big to be small, too small to be big, Michael's got the blueprint to break you free. He'll show you why chasing revenue isn't the answer. How often do we tell you this? It's about how you build a business that fuels your life instead of draining it. It's not theory, it's reality. So let's meet Michael and see how to do that. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Michael Walsh. It's great to have you join us today.
Well, thanks for having me here.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. I own a business consulting firm, Walsh Business Growth Institute. What we do is we help people grow companies consistent with and in support of their goals and commitments in life. I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, and we work throughout Canada, the United States, the UK, and a little bit in Europe as well, assisting people in the growth of their companies, again, in support of those goals. This past May, I had my 30th anniversary, so I've been doing it for a year or two, and still going strong, having a great time.
You know, it's interesting because I think it depends on the business owner. Some business owners are all about, I just want to build a business that makes money. And I think it's really hard to do that. What I mean is it's hard to compete against somebody who loves what they're doing and will go the extra yard. Whereas when you make your business fit your life and your business and life kind of meld together, I think that's the sweet spot. I don't think enough business owners think about their life and what they really want and fit the business to them instead of kind of trying to fit themselves to the business in a way that doesn't work. Since you've been doing this for so long, what have you noticed?
Well, actually, I love what you're saying, because if somebody just wants the cash, we actually pass on that client because it's just too hard. If all your focus is on the money, you'll fall short. And even if you start to achieve it, it won't be enough, and there is no satisfaction there. If we work best when we're dealing with either craftspeople who want to grow their profession, or people that are just out to make an impact. They're looking at what little corner of the world they want to make an impact in, and sometimes it's outside themselves. Sometimes they want to make an impact on the people that work with them. But if there's something there beyond the profit, they tend to have more profit. So, and I love what you're saying. It's the passion, it's the energy, it's the excitement, it's the enthusiasm for the impact or difference that they're trying to make. And when people are given the chance to do that, magical things can happen. It's just so much fun to play in. And that's why I'm still here 30 years later having a great time, because I get to participate with people when they're actually creating their dreams, not only for themselves, but for others. They're making them come true.
And it is a lot of fun. You know, before we hit record, we were talking about spreadsheets, which are one of my favorite things. I love spreadsheets, and we've been playing with them both for well over 30 years. And so when I figured out how to use spreadsheets in business, and the fact that people weren't doing that, like, it was kind of like mind blowing for me. Like, how do you run a business without understanding the numbers? And how do you run numbers without building spreadsheets that tell you what's going on in the business?
Yep.
And yet that was just kind of like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to go do, because this is what I'm built for. And let's go have fun.
Excellent. And as somebody, my undergrad was a double major in commerce and economics from the University of Toronto. So I know exactly what you mean. And we, again, as we talked about before the recording, for me, the numbers tell a story. And the favorite tool that I started with in 1986 when it first came out was Lotus 123. And so that's been a year or two ago. I don't even know how long it's been discontinued, but it's been discontinued for decades. So, but the thing I loved about it was it really, really gives you access to what's the story. Because if you can learn to read the numbers, it tells you a lot about the trials and tribulations and the successes and the difficulties people have. You just need to learn how to read them right. That's all. And of course, that's your specialty.
And it is. And we look at the entire business through the lens of the numbers, and they're not always inside the accounting system. They're spread out, and you've got to be able to grab all of that data. And it doesn't matter what the business is, because they all have the same metrics, although some of them, certain metrics are irrelevant. You know, like, let's say accounts receivable. Mm-hmm. Some businesses just collect cash at the time of sale. There is no accounts receivable. So that's a zero. But for other businesses, it is a big deal. And then that comes back to how you designed your business. Did you design your business so you wouldn't have to deal with accounts receivable and chase people 90 to 120 days later? That's about thinking through how it all comes through. But yeah, you can put all those levers down on a single spreadsheet and a single equation, and then you get to play and you see what the problem is. And then you can go focus on actually fixing the problem instead of guessing. And that's kind of what you do, right? You help people fix an underlying issue. I think too often people try and fix the symptom.
I wouldn't disagree with that. Although I will play it where you play predominantly with the numbers, and they'll lead you places. I use the numbers as a tool, but I actually focus far more on the people side than just the number. I think you have to look at all aspects of a business when you're taking a look at it. So the numbers definitely play, and who's in the game and how do they get there? How do they feel about being there? You know, what is it that they're there for? Different people are in businesses for different ways. And if I've got a little business that's $1 million or $2 million in revenue, that's one thing. But if I've got a $5 million business, I'm in a different game, and it changes again at 10. And of course, there's this big chasm between 12 million and 20 million where you're too big for some things and too small for others. I mean, you've seen people, I'm sure, that need an ERP system and they're too small to afford it. And so they're trying to limp along without the types of metrics that you absolutely need to dial in, but you can't support the people without the types of metrics that we're talking about. Too often people think of the numbers and they think of it just as a tool to keep people under their thumb. That's not what it is at all. It's actually a tool that allows you to train and grow your people, support them, but also help them where they're struggling and help them move along so they can actually have more of a remarkable career on a day-by-day and week-by-week basis, not just some long-term thing.
And I agree with you, but I happen to know my skill sets. You see,
Okay.
the Excel sheet behaves the way I expect it to. People don't. And I'm not good at that part of it. God bless you for that. That's why I partner with other people. I'm like, here are the things you need to look at, and here's the things you need to look at with your people. Are they in the right seat? Do they want to do the job? Do they have the capability? And have you given them the right measurements? I'll tell you that, but if there's a problem, call Michael.
Well, I have to laugh because I had a colleague who was in the racing horses, and he said, "Michael, I got to tell you, there's one piece of advice I can give you." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Never invest in anything that eats." And I'm like, hang on a second here. I work with service-based businesses. That's everybody in every company that I got. I think I'm in big trouble. The term herding cats actually people earn that. That's, so it's fascinating to see what happens.
So you've got 30 years of experience. You kind of talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to really bring it to clarity. The difference between the 1 million and the 2 million and the problems they experience and the 2 million and the 5 million and the 5 million, each of those things, it's like new revenue that you go, it's all going to be perfect. You get the new devil, the
Absolutely.
next set of problems. And I think a lot of them are probably relatively predictable, and you know what you're going to face when you hit that particular zone. But I also find most business owners tend to be in their little bubble, and they don't always get out and see the bigger picture. And so they kind of feel alone, or they don't realize I'm experiencing the same thing as the guy across the street he might have a totally different business, but he's at the same size. And so he's probably experiencing a lot of the same issues that I am. We'd love to hear what you've found.
What I find is that, so first of all, I completely agree with your comment that, there are as many ways to grow a business as there are people. I mean, everybody's got their own unique strengths and abilities, and they also combine in different groups. If you go into business with one person who, let's say, is brilliant with people, you'll end up with one set of skills that you bring and another set of skills that person brings. And then there'll be other areas that you haven't got covered. If you went into business with somebody, for example, that was strong at marketing and sales, by contrast, you'd have a different set of combined skills. But there'd be, you might need some help with HR, things like that. So all the combinations really are unique, but the problems are very predictable and they're pretty similar. What happens is it's interesting because when anybody gets into business, the first goal they all have is, I want to make $1 million, got to make $1 million, And I've seen people that, it was this one woman I was dealing with. It was in the UK, 400,000 pounds per year, 52-year-old lady. And she'd been bouncing around between 250 and 400,000 pounds for the previous 10 years. But she was looking to see, if she could grow her company and that was fine. And her goal was $1 million. So it's like, okay, so in the first year, we actually got her to 700,000. And the second year, she was clear. She wanted to be at $1 million. I said, well, we got a problem with that. And she's like, well, what's the problem? I said, you're already at 1.4. She's like, really? Okay. And she's, well, I thought it was going to feel magic or something. It feels good, but I still have all these different issues and problems. It's like, well, yeah, there are still problems. The problems get bigger as you grow. And, it's interesting because between 0.8 million and 1.2 million, it's probably, from a survival point of view, it's probably the hardest time in a business. What I affectionately refer to as the zone of hell. Because you're too big and too small, but you really are too small to be able to afford other stuff. There's other times when you feel like you're too small and some of your profit goes to things that you didn't expect it to go to. But when you're less than $1 million or just hovering around $1 million, you've hired utility players the whole time because that's what you can afford. And everybody needs to be able to do everything, and you switch and, go back and forth. And what happens is, once you're well enough past $1 million, you're at 1.2 or more, then you continue to grow. And what I find is that as people, of course, the next milestone, if I'm at $1 million or get past my $1 million, the next milestone I'll aim for is 2. And for the people that hit 2 million, then the next milestone they aim for is not 4, but 5. And then when they hit 5 million, then they figure they're going to go for 10. And if they actually get up to 10 million, they'll go for 20. And what I find is that underneath each of these milestones of growth, there's what I call the danger zones, where there are underlying issues and nobody knows that they exist. We were mentioning this, we're talking before the call, and it's like everybody starts working on what they think the problem is. If I can see a problem, I can fix it, or I can get the resources to fix it. If I can't see the problem, but I know it exists, again, I can figure out how to fix it and move on. The ones that get people are the ones that they can't see, and they have no idea they exist, even when they're caught in the grips of the problem. So the question I had to look at was, what are the underlying issues? Because we were helping companies get through these different zones. And it was approaching 2, it was just after 5, it was when they were approaching 10, and then in this chasm between 12 million and 20 million, people were getting stuck. And it's interesting because once you get past 20 million, you don't hit another one of these till you're at about 40 million in revenues. That's a whole different conversation what happens there. But what we found was that there were 2 factors that combined to create the problem. The first factor was that people were outstripping their structures. Their systems and processes for a $2 million company, nobody's surprised to know that a $5 million company needs different systems and structures. And of course, when you get to 10, again, the $2 million structures don't support you at 10. But that we pretty much know that, anybody that stops and thinks goes, I have outgrown the structures. But the other dynamic that's occurring, especially in service-based businesses, is that you're adding to your ranks. You have more people. In fact, that's part of the reason sometimes you outstrip your structures. But what happens is that people have their own minds. I had to laugh because I think it was 1905 that Henry Ford said, why can't they just send their hands? Why do I have to get the whole person there? It's like, because they do what they want. The hands will actually follow the assembly line. That's really what I want. And it's like, no, this whole notion of herding cats becomes really alive. It's like, if you take a look, and let's say you had 4 people, okay? 4 people in a little company, that's 6 one-on-one relationships. So there's you, me, Joe, and Sally, okay? So there's me with you, me with Joe, me with Sally, there's 3. There's you with Joe, you with Sally, now we're up to 5, and then there's Joe and Sally with each other. There's 6 relationships. So there's 6 one-on-one relationships, okay? Now, Rocky, if you and I, the relationship that we have, we just met each other recently, you don't control that relationship. I don't control the relationship. It's a dynamic, though, that lives between us. We both influence it, but neither one of us controls it. The only way I could control a relationship with you is if I actually controlled you. And of course, people aren't big fans of being controlled, so that usually doesn't work very well. So it's like, okay. But what happens is, so that's at 4 people, okay? If you go to 9 people, it's, that's just over double. It goes from 6 relationships to 36. If I go to 25 people, I'm at 1,225 one-on-one relationships. If I go to 50 people, or actually, no, it's 630. Sorry. At 50 people, you're at 1,225. At a 100-person company, you have almost 5,000 one-on-one relationships. Any question why it's so hard to get the seating plan at the wedding? I can't put Jerry next to Mrs. McGillicuddy. He'll talk her ear off and she'll tell me about it for the next 7 months. I mean, it's just horrible. So as my ranks are swelling and people are all doing what they want to do, combined with me outstripping structures, what I do is as I outstrip the structures, I try to put new structures that control their behavior. Well, if I can only get them to do what I need them to do. And again, people don't want to be controlled. So that's the problem. You can combine the outstripping structures with swelling numbers of people. And that's where actually, fundamentally, people get stuck. And what happens is their freedom just goes away. So that's the biggest underlying issue that exists, is what I found.
So the people thing's going to take hours. Let's focus on the first question.
Okay.
Because that's my second love. It goes along with the spreadsheets, systems and processes. Mm-hmm. Quick, but 2 questions, because this is where I find people struggle. The first thing they struggle with is, I don't have time to do that, right? They don't see the value in it. It's all in their head, and trying to get it out of their head is more than they can imagine.
Right.
And that's part of it. And the second question that kind of goes along with that I'm interested in is, if I'm building the systems at the beginning, can I build a system that will continue to self-grow through all of those iterations of size growth? Or do you have to build a system for each and then rebuild?
It's the latter. Here's the thing. There is no system at 1 million that's going to survive 20 million. You're in a completely different company. You're in a complete, even 5 million or 10 million. It's like they're constantly shifting and support. Your overall vision or direction is absolutely, you can keep that. The values that you stand by, you can keep those. Everything else has to morph as you grow. It's like saying, yeah, but hang on a second. I've got a 2-year-old. What piece of clothing can I give my 2-year-old that they'll still be okay with at age 20? So they're constantly changing them. They're constantly morphing. They're constantly evolving. Now, there is a constant question that you can ask that will actually help you in building it. Are the systems that I'm putting in place to replace the old ones that I've just outgrown, am I putting them in to control people or try to constrain them or corral them into doing what I want them to do? Or am I putting them in to support them to be at their best? Okay, so it leads to the question, is a business a well-oiled machine or is a business an intelligent ecosystem? So if it's a well-oiled machine, that if you want to take a look at it from one perspective, I look, well, who is a well-oiled machine for? Well, a well-oiled machine is for its owners and its users. Okay. But the people aren't, the staff are not the users. They're the conduits in that. That's what the problem is. People feel like cogs in a system. It's only in the start of the 20th century that we actually started treating people like cogs in a system. Before that, it was learned from the master through apprenticeship. And in some industries, like, architecture, engineering, medicine, you still have apprenticeships that can go on. Medicine's huge for that. But the problem with apprenticeships was as soon as you got the assembly line, you were in a situation where everybody had to do it the same way, or else I had a lumpy assembly line. And we think that that's what management is. I'm the boss, you're the employee, you should do what I say. Well, that only came in with the assembly line. If I treat and we've outgrown that since, because in a service-based world, information age, and a network society, it's all about the intelligence and the knowledge of the individual teams of knowledge workers. So as opposed to try to constrain their behavior, they only work if I support them to be at their best. So if I put in the structure, I love your thing about building systems and structures. People have said, people come and people go, your structures are here to stay. That's what you should focus on. No. The truth is, I think we got it backwards. Okay, we need to actually build what are the systems and structures that allow my people to really excel, because that's the X factor in business.
What you're saying there is something that I believe in. And I see it a lot with technology. Mm-hmm. People all go out and buy technology and then they mold their company to the technology. Or, well, even take profit first. People all listening know profit first. They try to mold themselves to profit first in the way it is in the book. And I'm like, no, you have to take the system and the process, you have to mold it to your company. And if it can't, then it is not for you. Don't use that. Doesn't matter that everyone else does it. If it's not going to work for your company, going back to your analogy, I couldn't take the clothes from the 20-year-old and try and fit it on the 1-year-old because it just wouldn't work.
That's right.
No matter what you tried. And so you have to make sure that it works for you in the way you do business, and especially for the business owner. Like, I went through a whole ton of trying to put in all of these different systems that manage projects and all. And after the last one that we looked at, I just said, I'm just going to build the most simplest of Excel sheets with drop-down menus, and my VA fills it out for me every week, and it's perfectly, it works for me in a way that I wanted, because most of my stuff is repeatable. And I think that's where you got to think in order to do that, though. And
Correct.
That's the problem. I don't think people spend enough time thinking about their business.
Well, it's interesting because the upfront thinking saves you a ton of time. Remember, most service-based businesses, especially ones that are based in the expertise of their people, there are many things that happen the same again and again and again. What you want to free people up to do is to actually use their expertise when it's needed. So all the mundane stuff, that's what you want to systemize, and that stuff is consistent. If I'm in an engineering firm or an architecture firm, you know what? The standards that I start with, It's just like, are you going to recreate your logo every time you need to use letterhead? Well, of course not. Similarly, if they can have the standards all there, then what happens is when it comes to the design of something, it's a whole different conversation. They can use their expertise around the design. So I want to be able to free people up to bring their expertise at the table when it's actually going to pay to be at the table, and then free them up from the other mundane stuff in the meantime. So, if everybody has to run around and go to Staples every time they run out of stuff, it doesn't really work. You've got somebody in the office that'll sort all that stuff out, and everybody's got what they need in the meantime. So I agree.
You know what I find for the starting out business?
What's that?
They spend all their time on the logo instead of getting the first sale. Go out and get a sale. Go do something. Don't worry about the logo. Right? Yeah. Right thing, right time.
That's right. Your customer buys the impact of what you do, not the prettiness of it. Now, if you want to scale it and bring it, sure, there's eventually a time when you need the logo and you want the logo. That's great. I love my marketing people. Let's not get ourselves. And unless I can actually generate a result for a client, the client's not going to be interested in me no matter how pretty it looks.
That's correct. They don't buy the logo, right? They buy the outcome that they are looking for. Are there certain things that you have to look at each of these stages and say, maybe it's always a people problem, or is it a system problem? Or I guess you said we have to redo the systems. So how do we know that we're at that point where we've got to change something or do something?
People start getting grumbly. One of the things that you do is there's actually, everybody worries about what it takes to actually support people. And what I find is that it's actually not as hard as you think. We have a bunch of ingrained parts of who we are, but there's 4 basic ones that stick right out. First of all, we have the biological need to survive. We all have an innate desire to thrive. We have both the need and the ability to connect with each other. We know together we're stronger. And we also have the ability to adapt to a changing environment, even if we don't like the changes. Nobody predicted that the world could actually survive if everybody had to go home for 2 years. Nobody could predict that one. And yet somehow we did it, But the biological need to survive, will always trump the desire to thrive. However, you don't need to get your survival needs handled for life before you ever thrive. Otherwise, why would a 5-year-old ever share a toy? So both survive and thrive are in there concurrently. And as long as survive's settled, thrive works. So if I create an environment and I actually give you some structures that support you to be at your best, all of a sudden, Michael's a good guy. And all of a sudden, you don't feel threatened by me, and I can support you in different ways. And thrive shows up very, very easily. And what happens is that if you're happy and the other people you're working with are happy and you're able to make a difference, me as the owner, guess what happens to my life? Way more freedom, right? And so instead of having my freedom throttled because there's this sort of low-level tension, tug of war, because people seem to want different things, if I actually give people the tools they need to actually thrive, then they're in a situation where it really works. Now, it's like, well, I gave them the tools, they didn't do it. What's going on? Did you bring the right people to the team? That's the first thing. Half the battle is getting the right people on your team. And it's not, well, I only get the start. No, the right fit people for you. And that's more a function of the values and the skill set. There's a number of different factors there. And that's too often people will just hire the first one that comes by, or the best one they seem to be able to find, even though they know it's not quite a fit. And then they wonder why they struggle so much. So hiring is part of it. But once you get somebody there, now what I want to do is I want to let them be the person they can be. I want them to bring the contribution that they want to bring. And so it's a combination of getting the right people on board. You train them and grow them in terms of the results that you do want to achieve. And then, but you also, the other thing that a lot of people miss is they don't actively train how to work together in teams. And this happens especially under 10 million in revenue for companies. That's not an active part. And we've been ingrained with never cheat, do your own work, don't look on the other guy's page. And you know what? Don't just do the stuff you're good at. You have to do all of it, because otherwise you're a lazy slacker. Well, hang on a second. in teams, don't we look at complementary strengths? So if you're good at A and I'm good at B, then I should do B and you should do A. And then together we come together, we got a much stronger result. You're happier, I'm happier, the client's happier because they care that the whole team can do it, not with which person can do it, you know? But again, as we grow, what happens is trying to constrain it, we change even from that to some sort of competency models. And now we're in a whole heap of trouble because now we're trying to make people just like each other. It's like, okay, then. I mean, even Lego has different shaped blocks.
Yeah, we it's interesting because you talk about you don't generally teach teamwork. In the same way, in a large company, they don't teach leadership. They don't teach management. They just kind of put people in seats that they think will fit the seat without really asking, does that person belong in that seat? Because do they have the skills for that seat? And I used to see it all the time on the sales side. The best salesperson gets put to sales manager, and that's not always a good fit. As a matter of fact, more often than not, it's not a good fit because they're good salespeople. They're not good managers, and they may have their own way of doing things. They don't realize that other people do things differently. And even though you were successful with your way of doing it, is not necessarily how somebody else is going to be successful with their way of doing it. But yet we do also have to have some level of agreeability in there. And I think a lot of the trades where you're building a deck or building a house or doing something, everyone's kind of got to agree that this is the way we do stuff. You can't have people doing things 6 different ways, because that does create an issue. But getting everyone to table to make those decisions, it seems like a big struggle for most business owners.
Well, one of the big, I love what you're saying, because the hardest job in the entire company is the manager. And the reason is because as an individual contributor, it was their success as an individual contributor that got them the promotion to management. So I know how to do things, I know how to generate a result, and I know how to do it a particular way. Those skills, when you go to management, are exactly the skills they cannot use. Because as a manager, the number one skill, especially in a service-based environment where the problems are complex and they're not obvious, the solutions are not obvious, people need to work together to figure stuff out. The biggest thing that a manager can give his or her people is the ability to think things through. And whereas when managers get promoted, they figure, well, I already know, they don't know yet, I'll just tell them, then they'll know. And it doesn't work that way, because each situation is unique, each situation is different, and it requires different thinking. So if I just tell them, I'm in a situation where I'm actually going to get myself in trouble. It's evidence. Gallup did surveys. One of the surveys I saw, 71% of all managers put themselves in the top 20% of all managers. So that tells me nobody knows what good management is, and they all think they're doing it. Okay. So, it's like they just don't know. I mean, when you say sales manager versus a salesperson, quite often there's a level of competitive spirit, there's a level of tenacity, and there's a really, really fine edge of listening for where is the gap between where they are and what they really want. The best salespeople can really identify that, and they can deal with that in their terms. Okay. A sales manager, those skills are not what makes somebody good as a sales manager. A sales manager needs to be able to deal with the bumps and hiccups that people face, and how to be there and listen when somebody's struggling, and remind them of where their strengths are. And there's some training involved as well. Sure. But I got to tell you, that edge, that competitive edge, that's not part of management. There's a whole nurturing side that's actually way more important in management than it is with regards to sales. So you see it more starkly in sales management than in other management. But it happens all the way through management. It's fascinating to see the impact. And then leaders, okay, they hold managers accountable for a larger result. Well, when I was an individual contributor, I was accountable for my result. So as a manager, I can't be still accountable for a larger result because the people are accountable for the result. So to think that I'm accountable for a larger result means that I need to turn them into cogs in my system. which goes against actually building any kind of an ecosystem where people are given the chance to do their best. Instead, if I'm treated like somebody whose job is to support the people so that they can actually achieve the wins, then we're in a situation that collectively the team does way more. Now, that sounds nice and fine, but unless they also figure out how to work together in a team, it doesn't work. You'll notice that the places where it matters is when there's either a gobs and gobs of money at stake, or when it's life and death. You know what? In the military, they figured out how to get teams to work together. Fire departments know how to get teams to work together. Entertainment, okay, the orchestra knows how to get people how to work together. In plays, they know how to get people to work together because people vote with their feet. They leave if your play is disjointed. Same with an orchestra. But I got to tell you, when it's life and death stuff, they figure it out. SWAT teams are drilled for 2 years on how to work together. It's literally 2 years of training on how to rely on each other and in what circumstance and what they know they can count on each other for. Because again, it's life and death, and not just theirs, it's whoever they're saving. So, when it matters, we figure it out. And we figure, well, in day-to-day business, we don't have the time for that. Really? You don't have time for that? How much time is wasted in any business? It's like, there's just way too much wasted. We all know that. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. But if you start learning about teams and start building it, what happens is it makes it easier for people to work together. And when people actually work together, isn't it just easier for everyone?
It is, but they don't behave like my spreadsheet. 2 + 2 is always 4 in my spreadsheet.
Yeah, but you know what? If I do this right, 2 + 2 = 6 in my team.
You are correct, sir.
And I've just saved you money on your spreadsheet.
And I agree with you. I concur. Not my skill set. And I sit in my seat. I let other people sit in that seat. Out of curiosity, are there, besides your wonderful book, are there great books about how to lead teams?
Yeah. General McChrystal wrote a book, and I'm trying to remember what it was called. But McChrystal.
Was that the submarine?
No, that's also Turn the Ship Around is the one with the submarine guy.
Yeah.
And that was a brilliant book as well. McChrystal they actually were dealing with these splintered cells in overseas, okay, in Eastern, in the Eastern world, as far as that's concerned. So he pulled together people like to have them talk with each other at 4:00 every single day. And he could have as many as 10,000 people on that call, and anybody could say something. And it wasn't just, they had to contribute to moving something forward, but they literally built things up and people would start sharing with each other. And what they found was that instead of building silos, when people started to learn what the others were actually doing and what they needed it for, people that were possessive about their resources all of a sudden said, well, listen, I don't need this till next week. You want to use it? And all of a sudden resources are passing back and forth, and information started to flow a lot smoother. And they started getting results. I can't remember the name of the book, but I got to tell you, it's General McChrystal is the guy that actually wrote that book. It's been a while since I've read it.
I will have to look that up.
Yes.
And see what it is. Out of curiosity, just because we seem to be hitting this next wave, how are you seeing people react to AI? Because it's definitely changing the landscape in a variety of different ways. And the fact is, we're going to have to adapt and figure out the next step.
Well, there's a few things. So I have a few comments on that one. First of all, one of the alarming statistics I've seen is that people's intelligence level is starting to drop because they're relying on AI too quickly, too early, and they're just trying to get AI to do all the answers and solutions. When AI works really, really well is if you take a first cut at something and then you turn around and you feed it into AI and then you get the revisions or the refinements. But so what now you've got is your individual thinking and the humanity that you bring to anything that you do. And yes, there's humanity in the story of the numbers, but then you get the benefit of AI supporting that. The other thing I found was that AI can be a lot stronger. People are still figuring out how to use AI. One of the things that I've seen is the better you are at the prompt or the request, the better the solution. Now, a lot of people I've actually seen people say, okay, so, whether you're looking at ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Manus, GenSpark, Gemini, any of them. When you're in a situation, the only one I really don't use is Grok, because Grok themselves will tell you that they leak into the public domain even for the private ones. And that's Grok telling me that. I'm like, yeah, I tend to believe, and they'd say, hi, our security is not as good as you want it to be. I'm gonna trust that that limitation is probably there. But what happens is you can actually ask. So let's say I'm dealing with Claude. I'll ask Claude, tell me a prompt that I should use to get this result. And then, but here's the other piece that I found. A friend told me about this, and it makes a huge difference. In order to get this prompt to be as thorough as possible and give me the best result possible, what questions do you have for me, the answers of which would generate a stronger prompt? So the first thing is to ask the questions that will lead to a stronger prompt. They might ask you 6 or 8 questions. Then you give your answers to the 6 or 8 questions. And all of a sudden, the prompts come back way stronger and the results are more robust and you're actually using it. There's no such thing as giving AI too much. You can't give it too much. The more information you give it, the stronger the responses and the discernment, if you want to call it that, or let's just say that the better the algorithm works to get you what you want. Now, a lot of people, that said, that's a very specific micro thing, but a lot of people are concerned that AI is going to take over the world and do all this stuff. And it's like, well, I don't know about that. Here's the thing. AI will not take over the world. People who know how to use information more effectively and a more time effectively and more to the point, I think are going to actually have a larger influence. And it's already happening. So what I look at is I would assert that the information age is in the process of completing, because information is becoming ubiquitous through AI. So everybody's going to have all the information there is. So the question that it leads to is, so what's the next generation? I mean, we had the Renaissance. We had a bunch of different things. We had the Industrial Revolution. We had the information age. We've had a network world. And as that's coming to a completion, the question is, what's the next stage? And I would assert that it's the age of creativity. It's how do I use creativity armed with this pal I have, my second in command, this little AI tool that gives me better information. And how do I creatively come up with solutions that actually continue to inform and make the planet better? And not just in terms of fixing any climate control or whatever that is, just all aspects of what it is to live in a really holistic environment. Because the truth is that we're still people, and we got a lot of people here, and we're over 8 billion now, and it continues to grow. And you know what? The people who are creative and really creatively find ways to improve life for each of us are the ones that actually do the best, typically. So that's my answer.
I concur with a lot of what you say. I believe that people who use AI are the ones who are going to strive. It's not that it's going to replace people. It's a tool to be used. And those who use it will do better. Just like those business owners who use a spreadsheet and know their numbers will do better than those who are allergic to their numbers and don't look at them. Right? Same concept. The prompt that I usually use always, after I tell it what I want, I'm like, ask me one question at a time to help improve the answer. And that has been a game changer. It's the same concept of what you're doing. You're doing it at the prompt level. I'm just doing it at any level of, here's information, ask me questions one at a time, because otherwise it asks me 20 and my head hurts. I'm like, one. And I'll answer that, because if you answer the one, it may have a different second.
And the interesting thing, just to feed on that, if I ask it 20 questions, I have no idea what it treats as the priority. Whereas if it asks me one question, I love what you're suggesting, because if you ask one question, you know exactly what it treats as a priority. And if I don't like the priority, my next question could be something else. If I really like the direction it's going, I can continue to go down that trail. So I love the refinement of what I suggested. And I love
it's a slight difference. Yeah. No, we use AI dramatically to help improve processes, do things, and it's coming. And, I miss the internet. Like I didn't, when I say I miss the internet, I didn't see the business value in it and how to make money through the shift. It didn't dawn on me at that point in my life. With this one, I'm like, I'm not missing this wave. We're going to ride this baby. We're going to have fun with it. And so far, it's been wonderful.
Well, just in line with that, just before we continue, is, I would say that you don't lose jobs, yet at the same time, there are low-level jobs that have been shifted because of it. And it's actually having a negative impact on some expertise-driven businesses because people going through things manually were part of the training ground to become an expert. Now, when technology is doing it manually, there's a gap. And the thing that we haven't figured out yet, and we will, but we haven't yet, is how do I actually scale that gap and give people the level of depth of expertise that they need to continue to rise in their respective fields. So that's a very real challenge that is not, in my opinion, in my understanding, I won't say, because my opinion is not definitive in this, but my understanding is that that's not been sorted out yet.
I don't believe it has. And the way I say it is if I go into Excel and I say, how much is 2 plus 2? And it says 5, I'm going to be like, wait a minute, that's not right, because I know it.
Right.
If I go into AI, it hallucinates. And
it does.
It will argue with me that 2 plus 2 is 5. You need to have enough discernment to go, wait a minute, there is a problem here. I'm not going to take this. But that comes back to training. If you don't teach people that 2 plus 2 is 4, you're going to put them in a higher level position and they're going to accept 2 plus 2 is 5. And God bless them.
Yeah. And they don't know any difference until you hit the inevitable calamity.
Right. And so I think it's a great tool. You've got to figure out how to still take people at entry level, build them up, use the tool to help train them, because AI can help train them. Just make sure that you've got guards in place to make sure that the answers are correct and that it's in line with your business, your values, where you're going, and all of that. And I think that's a big part of it. Definitely something they should do.
One of the things I love to do with AI is bake off. So I'll put something in ChatGPT, something in Claude, and then I'll have them both answer the same thing and they come up with a completely different flavor. And then I might ask them to adjust it or ask the one I might like one better, but I like the way that the other one came out better. So I might do that. And then just for kicks, I might, once it's gone a certain distance, then bring in something like Perplexity to actually sort of change it, because they all have a different tone. They all have different perspectives. It's fascinating to see the differences.
Yeah, we've kind of standardized, but early on, I would do certain parts in one thing and then I would put it in the other because I knew it was better flavor. I'm like, here's this. Now you make it do this because I know you're better at doing that. I probably need to go back and start doing another round of that. I feel like I'm ready for that next round of how to separate, test, and see, because they've all made tremendous inroads since I first started using them. And it's probably time to go back and check them again. No doubt about it.
Excellent.
If people would like to learn more about you and you've got your book, mention your book and where they can find you and so forth.
Well, my book is called Freedom by Design. There's the book. Nice light blue cover. Freedom. It's the business owner's guide to grow, make an impact, and find the joy again. That's on Amazon anywhere. If you type in Freedom by Design and my name, Michael Walsh, you'll find it. It'll just pop up. You'll find it there. Our business website is walshbusinessgrowth.com. So Walsh Business Growth, all one word.com. And, there's lots of questions and different perspectives and things like that you can find out with regards to that. And we do have it in print, Kindle, and Audible, because I know there's a lot of people that prefer to listen these days than to read print books. But so we made sure that all three were available. But that's pretty much how people can get in touch with me.
That's awesome, and we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me here.
I hope today's conversation gave you the clarity and confidence to take back control of your business and life. Remember, profit isn't an afterthought. It's the foundation. If you're ready to start running your business with purpose and building real financial freedom, let's have a conversation. Call Michael, call me, call someone else, but just get moving. One thing I want to remind you, on my other podcast, Richer Soul, I had Jeff Woods on to talk about the AI-driven leader. I'm going to put a link into the show notes so you can find it. You want to learn more about how to think and how to use AI to help you achieve these things on your own, then do it. It's going to help you in every part of your business. And it's one way that you don't need to get more resources in how to be more resourceful and focus on my favorite subject. Thanks for listening to The Profit Answer Man, where we believe more revenue doesn't mean more profit. And the bottom line is what really matters. If you're ready to stop living check to check, take control of your cash flow, and finally get paid what you're worth, we should talk. We work with 7- and 8-figure businesses and well-funded startups. If you're a smaller business, check out the Profit Blueprint program. It's a do-it-yourself solution that also can come with my direct guidance in the same level we give our one-on-one clients. When you're ready for results, book a discovery call. There's a link in the show notes or at profitcomesfirst.com. You'll be speaking and working directly with me. In the meantime, grab your free copy of the Profit Blueprint at profitcomesfirst.com. It's the next step to turning your business into a consistent cash flow generating machine. If you'd like to dig more into leading yourself, your company, and building the ultimate life, listen to my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we cover these topics in great depth. There's a link in the show notes. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.